Hello, this movie is for distance and midpoint. We are going to focus on midpoint. So in your notes, let's go to the midpoint slide. Find the midpoint of AB. So one way to do that is to get this distance or difference here, 4 minus negative 6, we get 10, and then divide by 2. So we get 5. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We get that the midpoint is negative 1. If we did the average between 4 and negative 6, where we added 4 plus negative 6, and then divided by 2, that would be an average. Let's see if that works. This gives us negative 2 over 2, which is negative 1. That also works. So we're going to look at midpoint as the average between two numbers. It's what's right in between. Let's go to the next slide. A is at negative 5, 6. And let's plot that. B is at 7, negative 2. Plot that. And we are going to find the midpoint. There's going to be two ways to find midpoint that I want to focus on. If it's graphed, you can find midpoint visually. Meaning, if I'm traveling from A to B, I could travel in a vertical and horizontal way. And if I did that, this would be a distance of 8. This would be a distance of 12. Well, I could go half that distance, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this would be the midpoint, because then I could go down 4 and to the right 6 again to get to the other end point. So that point is at 1, 2. Another way to think about this is the average of the x's. So the average would be negative 5 plus 7 divided by 2. The average of the y's would be 6 plus negative 2 divided by 2. Please keep in mind, if you want to plug all this into your calculator, you have to insert parentheses around the numerator, because the calculator will just take the last number divided by 2. But you want to get the sum answer and then divide by 2. So this is going to give you 2 divided by 2, which is 1. And then this is going to give you 4 divided by 2, which is 2. And 1, 2 is the midpoint. So we see midpoint visually here on the coordinate plane by taking essentially the slope or the rise and the run and taking that in half. Or we look at it as the average. So the midpoint formula is just the average of the x's and the average of the y's. It's the sum of the two x's divided by 2 and the sum of the two y's divided by 2. Find the midpoint of these two endpoints, negative 3, 5. Let's plot that. And 7, negative 5. And feel free to pause the movie anytime you need to plot the points or write something down. I might be going too quick here for you, but feel free to pause it. So we're going to look at midpoint visually here. We're going to go down and to the right, and we go down 10. We go to the right 10. So if I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this right here would be my midpoint, which is at 2, 0. So midpoint is at 2, 0. And you can get that by just going visually, by going half the way. Let's do midpoint. We don't have a coordinate plane, so here we're going to look at midpoint as an average between two numbers. So we're going to take negative 18 plus 20 divided by 2. And we're going to do 25 plus negative 15 divided by 2. So this gives us 2 divided by 2. And this is 1. 25 minus 15, 10 divided by 2, which is 5. So we took the midpoint by getting the average. Most common mistake is people will subtract. We know difference, direction, if we're looking at the distance between two things, we find the difference. But in this case, we're taking the average, so we're taking the sum. So that would be the most common mistake. Let's go to the next slide. This one's a little different. Given that the midpoint of this is at negative 3, 1, and the end point is this, find t the other side. And I'm going to show you one way to do this that I think will kind of stick with you. Rather than graphing, I want to make a segment and talk about this. So we got the two endpoints. The midpoint here is at negative 3, 1. And we have S is at 2, negative 6. We've got to get what's at T. So we could just create sort of this makeshift graph. We're not going to use this coordinate plane. And we can look in terms of, what did I do to 2 to get to negative 3? Meaning, on a number line, if you start at the number 2, what do you have to subtract to get to negative 3? Well, we'd have to subtract 2 to negative 3. We subtract 5. And so then what do we have to do to 6? Or, I'm sorry, 2 to negative 3, we subtract 5. So we got to subtract 5 again. Negative 3 minus 5, because that's the midpoint, so I got to go that same distance on the other side, is negative 8. Then I got to ask that same question with the y's. What did I do to negative 6 to get to positive 1? And so I had to add 6 and then 1, so I'm really adding 7. And then what is 1 plus 7? Gives me 8. So the answer is negative 8, 8. Let's try that over here. Given that the midpoint is at negative 5, 4, let's draw our line segment. Let's get the two endpoints. The midpoint, M, is at negative 5, 4. S is at 3, negative 2. I always tend to put the one endpoint that's given on the left. You don't have to, because it doesn't matter. And we just got to find what t is over here. So what are we doing to 3 to get to negative 5? Well, I have to subtract 3 and then subtract 5 to get all the way to negative 5. So that's subtracting 8. So I'm going to subtract 8 again from negative 5. And so that's going to give me negative 13. Then what do I do to negative 2 to get to 4? I have to add 6. So I'm going to add 6 here from 4 to get to this endpoint, which is going to give me 10. So my answer is negative 13, 10. Given that the midpoint is this, find the ordered pair for A if B is 8, 3. So I'm going to start with our line segment. I'm going to draw it this way now to show you that it works either way. Please feel free to pause the movie, try this on your own, and then you can press play when you finish. What do I do to 8 to get to 2? I subtract 6. So 2 subtract 6 is going to be negative 4. What do I do to 3 to get to negative 1? I subtract 4. So what do I do to negative 1? I subtract 4 again, and I get negative 5. So the other endpoint is at negative 4, negative 5. All right, pause the movie, try this guy on your own, and then press play when you are finished. So we've got the midpoint is at 4, negative 5. Find the ordered pair for A if B is at 8, negative 2. So, because it's a midpoint, I look at this direction. How far did I go? 8 to get to 4. I subtracted 4. So I have to subtract 4 here. And that gives me 0. And then what am I doing to negative 2 to get to negative 5? I'm subtracting 3, so I have to subtract 3 again. And I get negative 8. So that is my other endpoint. 0, negative 8. All right, I feel like that's good. We're not going to do this because we're in geometry. And that's all for this movie. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. Thank you.